Hello students, in this video we are going to discover which set of lines are parallel using the 4 different angle relationships we spoke about in the last video. The question is, which lines are parallel, and justify your answer with the appropriate vocabulary. The 4 types of angle pairs that would prove that lines are parallel are corresponding angles being congruent, consecutive interior angles being supplementary, alternate interior angles being congruent, or alternate exterior angles being congruent. If I can find one of these pairs within the picture, I'll be able to find the set of lines that is congruent, that is parallel. So what I've already done over here on this first example is I've gone through and I have found all the missing angle measures. Let me explain how. If I cover up the bottom 3 lines and just look at the intersection of line N and line P, I can use vertical angles and linear pairs to find the 3 missing angles. And I can use that pattern working all the way down the page here. Once I have all the angles visible, now I can look for angle relationships. I can look for corresponding angles that are congruent, or alternate interior angles that are congruent, or alternate exterior angles that are congruent, or I could look for a set of consecutive interior angles that are supplementary. I usually find that the corresponding angles is what my eye checks out first. Here I see that angle 50 and angle 50 on the line P and the line R are a corresponding pair that is congruent. That means line R is parallel to line P. So line P is parallel to line R. Corresponding angles are congruent. So once you work through all the angle measures, it should be pretty easy to see which angles are a corresponding congruent pair. I'm going to pause the video and find all the missing angle measures in this second example. Okay, I've listed out all the angle measures that were missing using vertical angles and linear pairs. Now I'm going to be looking for a corresponding set of angles that is congruent. I can definitely rule out line S. It's the only hub of angles that does not use 78 degrees and 102 degrees. Looking at the other 3, they're all very similar, so I've got to make sure to look for a set of corresponding angles that are congruent. My eye sees that this 102 degree angle that's on the top and to the right matches another 102 degree angle that's on the top and on the right. That's a set of corresponding angles. They are congruent. Therefore, line P is congruent to line R. If you look at the angles surrounding line Q, I see a lot of 78 and 102 degree angles, but nothing is a corresponding congruent pair. Line R is parallel to line P, and again, I've chosen to use the corresponding congruent angles. This is certainly not the only reason that can be used to prove that these 2 lines are parallel. I could use alternate interior angles. Check this out. This 78 degree angle is congruent to this 78 degree angle. If line Q was not in there as a distraction, it would be easy to tell that these are an alternate interior angle pair. So your justification may be different than mine. This next example really is set up to confuse you. I see a lot of 89.9 degree angles everywhere. So first thing I'm going to do is write in all the vertical angles. Next, I'm going to find all the linear pairs. They definitely made this problem so that you couldn't eyeball it. You would have to have quite the eye to be able to see a difference of 0.2 degrees. So we're going to have to find an angle pair that follows one of our rules. If I cover up line N and just look down this line M as a transversal, I do not see any congruent corresponding pairs. This 89.9 degrees would match up with 90.1 degrees, and that's not a congruent pair. If I use line Q as the transversal, now I see a pair of congruent corresponding angles. This 89.9 degrees and this 89.9 degrees are both on the top left of their angle hub. That's a corresponding set of angles. We can look down line P and see the same thing. The 90.1 degrees and 90.1 degrees are a set of corresponding congruent angles. Therefore, P and Q have no relationship to one another. They are not congruent. They are not parallel. However, M and N are parallel to one another as seen by all the sets of corresponding congruent angles. Again, you could pick a different reason here if your eye is looking for a different angle pair. I've trained myself to look for corresponding angles. Our fourth example is a bit tricky. I'm going to follow the same technique I've followed previously. I'm going to mark every vertical angle, 65, 125, 55 degrees, 115 degrees, and I'm going to find every linear pair. 180 degrees minus 65 is 115. 180 degrees minus 125 is 55. 180 degrees minus 55 is 125. And 180 degrees minus 115 is 65. Now, looking at all of the angle measures down the transversal line M, you may see two sets of pairs. I see a 115 degree angle here and its corresponding congruent angle here on line D. Therefore, line A is parallel to line D. Again, corresponding angles are congruent. But there's more this time. I also see a 55 degree angle that corresponds to another 55 degree angle, another set of corresponding congruent angles. That means line B is also parallel to line C for the same reason. I think I'm starting to sound like a broken record with this corresponding angles are congruent. I tend to stick with something that works and just go with it. You guys, be careful on these problems. I think it's very clear to see that they tried to be tricky here. There's no visual inspection that says line B and C are parallel. They definitely don't look parallel, so you're going to have to go by the numbers. Our last example here is pretty complicated. We've got up to 16 angles to compare. However, the question has changed. It says, we are given that line M is parallel to line N. Line M is parallel to line N. With that information, we're asked which angles are congruent to angle 9. Well, I hope we've picked up on this along the way, that when we are looking for a set of parallel lines, then we need to find one of the angle pairs listed. My favorite, of course, has been the corresponding angles. Because line M and line N are the parallel lines, that means that any angle along line A has no relationship to the angles along line B. A is merely a distraction. Now I can work down transversal B to find the angles that are congruent to angle 9. I'm going to start with my favorite, the corresponding angle pair. Angle 15, and those are corresponding. I could also use angle 10. That's a vertical angle to angle 9. And vertical angles are also congruent. And I can also use angle 13. Angle 13 is an alternate exterior angle to angle 9. If you remember what we said from the very beginning, there's a way to keep this very simple. All the obtuse angles on this set of transversals and parallel lines are congruent to each other. Angle 9, 10, 15, and 13 are all obtuse, and therefore they're all congruent to each other. I hope this was a good review of parallel lines and transversals. Thanks for watching.